Sorry about the rain, I think God saw me masturbating. Hi everyone, it's Lacey Rain and I just got back from being part of the Human Library at a Sexology season. I learned so much about sexuality and gender and stuff that I never thought I would gain from the experience, but it was really interesting and I thought today I would share with you some of my knowledge so that we can continue to educate each other and, you know, grow from our experiences. Today I'm going to be talking about where babies come from. First, a little history into the act of birth. Birth was invented by the Virgin Mary as a tool to bring God into planet Earth. But for those of you who don't have such Christian beliefs, you'll know that we can chart birthing back as far as the 1930s when Great Britain was in the Depression and babies were our biggest export. Now, 80% of the time in most human mammals, birthing is done by the women of society. And women is a term that was created by feminists in the 1920s during Prohibition. When drinking was outlawed, they created a new word because that's progress. Women comes from the term womb, which is where babies are housed. So in order to create a baby, you need both the woman and the Anne. But before we get to the womb, we need to discuss how the baby gets there, which is the act of what we call conception. Leonardo DiCaprio's vision of conception consists of 3 subconscious levels in your brain that you visit during sleep, which allows you to bear a child and get pregnant. However, this is a huge misconception because this is a huge misconception, no pun intended, because there are actually 5 stages that eventually lead to pregnancy. The first stage of conception is all down to the man. The man needs to work himself up into a state which we would call marriage. Marriage is when 2 men can join themselves for life and one of them finally becomes a woman into herself, thanks to the help of her husband. All across the galaxy there are many different religions and creeds that have their own, you know, version or ritual for marriage. However, in order to conceive a child, it has to be done under the one true Catholic God. Which brings us to stage 2 of conception, which is the act of God. Now, God is responsible and the creator of all things in the world, and also he is the judge of good and evil. So when you decide it's time for a baby, God will judge your sins and your good doings and will decide on how attractive your child is going to be. This is the reason that prayer is so important to so many Catholics, because they want to give birth to the next Keira Knightley or to the next James Dean or the next Khloe Kardashian. The other way in which God is involved in conception is that Jesus Christ was erected on the cross so that the male of our species could be erect themselves. This brings us along to part 3, which proves that there's truth in the old saying, the penis mightier than the sword. After marriage, a man's penis swells to something called an erection, which is a sword that cuts the womb man's open, and that is why women have periods. Which brings us to part 4, periods. Now, women have a cyclical process called a period in which eggs hatch in or outside of them. In order for your best chances of conceiving a child, there's a specific point in the month in which you are able to conceive, and those are called Sundays. Now, the period, not to be confused with the colon or the semicolon, which is when a man is only halfway to erect, which is normally halfway through the process of a wedding, and the colon is... Periods come at the end of every sentence and once a month, unless you're having a baby. The penis will put a full stop into the woman, and this begins stage 5 of conception. Stage 5 is the really sexy part of conception that everyone enjoys, which is baptism, where you drown the baby you had for its original sin. This is an act that is traditionally reserved for the men who were inside a woman before they were married to her. This is why the Latin word for baby comes from the English word bye-bye, because children's longevity turns out to be not that long, apparently. Now I'm going to teach you some sexy positions to help increase your chances of having a baby. When Saint Bernadette Bardot went to Lourdes, she travelled with a group of nuns, and it was a very long and boring travel, so they invented the missionary position in order to pass the time. And this is why when people enact this position, they normally cry. Another great position to try is canal sex, which is anal sex with Christ still there. Leonardo da Vinci, the Greek composer, was inspired by Jesus Christ being in his cave, and that is why we have anal sex. After the woman has carried the child around for 9 months, she'll vote labour, which is why all men are born equal. The actual birth itself is probably the most complicated part, so we'll just skip ahead. After the actual act, the woman will experience afterbirth, which is a horrible psychological scarring that is induced due to seeing another human life that will exceed your own. It's normally made up of the plagues of birds and the plague of bees. So there you go, now you know where babies come from, so you can help spread the information and spread awareness on this. My name has been Lacey Rain, Dr. Lacey Rain? Does that... I'll think about it, but thank you for watching, bye! This is a ritual traditionally done by men and women